Hello and welcome to the program Moneyline with Nancy. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, it's good to have you on the program. This is where we keep you up to speed and up to the minute with business, finance, economic markets, investment stories every day around the country, around Africa, and of course, around the world. So we will be doing it again today. Of course, we started the show yesterday. I officially resumed for the year yesterday. For those of you that watched, and perhaps for those of you that did not watch yesterday, thank you for joining us today. I am Nancy Naji. A whole lot has happened, of course, in the past few days, so to speak, because we are still looking at the budget 2017. Of course, the budget of this year, would be the official documents that the government would use, of course, to operate the finances of the country. That includes revenue, as well as income, that includes expenditure, debt servicing, and all of that. When we come to the budget, or for some of us that are analysts and we look at the budget every year, a lot of us have argued that it's seemingly a ritual, that there's really nothing, what should we be pleased about? And the implementation of the budget is also one thing that we need to look at every year, the execution of the budget. This year's budget is 7.29 trillion naira, the highest so far in history. I'll be giving you a breakdown for some ministries later on the show. So we will be looking at budget 2017. Of course, last year's budget 2016, which was about 6.06 trillion naira, was trailed with the issue of budget padding. So I will be looking at all of that today, if we've improved, or perhaps as Nigerians, we don't even understand what the executive brings out as a budget every year. And to put all of that into perspective, my guest will be joining me shortly, Dr. Joe Abah. He's the Director General, Bureau of Public Sector Reforms, that's BPSR, from the presidency. He'll be joining me in a moment. But let's quickly take a break. And when we come back, I'll be filling you up with the money news for today. So much to talk about. We'll be right back. All right, we'll get started. The federal government urges the Central Bank of Nigeria to close exchange rate gaps. Of course, the federal government says that there is need for the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is the apex bank, to close the gap between the official and the parallel market exchange rate, or what we call the black market, for the naira against the greenback urgently. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, made this known at the World Economic Forum in Davos, that's in Switzerland. The Vice President says as part of the country's economic recovery plan, the federal government is having talks with the CBN on the need to unify the two exchange rates, as the gap between the official and parallel market is not helpful. All right, still on the Central Bank of Nigeria, of course, it has issued a warning. It has issued a warning to banks and other financial institutions against holding, trading, or transacting in virtual currencies, such as Bitcoin, Ripples, Monero, Litecoin, Dogecoin, OneCoin, and other similar products, other coins, stressing that they are not legal tenders in the country. And a circular posted on its website yesterday, signed by the Director of Financial Policy and Regulation Department, Kevin Amugo, the Apex Bank pointed out that transactions are largely untraceable and anonymous, making them susceptible to abuse by criminals, especially in money laundering and financing of terrorism. The Central Bank of Nigeria further warned banks and other financial institutions to address the money laundering as well as terrorism financing risk associated with virtual currencies. Okay. Still on the Central Bank of Nigeria says that it will resume sales of dollar proceeds of international money transfer to bureau de change operators, that's the BDCs, this week, although manufacturers are against the move. The Apex Bank commenced the sale of dollar proceeds to IMTs, the International Money Operators, to BDCs in August 2016 as part of measures to stem the depreciation of the naira in the parallel market. However, the sale was suspended in December 2016 due to the Christmas and New Year holidays. All right, let's take a look at foreign investments, equities value. Of course, the value of a foreign portfolio investment in the Nigerian equities market. In the Nigerian equities market fell by 51.4% between January and November of 2016, following the tight foreign control policies of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Data from the Nigerian Stock Exchange released last week show that foreign portfolio investments between January and November last year stood at 473.5 billion naira, down from 973.7 billion naira in the same period of 2015. Although the capital market has remained attractive due to low prices of stocks, foreign investors who used to dominate have stayed away as a result of currency, liquidity, and reinvestment risk. All right, let's talk about banks' deposits. Of course, we're looking at bank deposits declining by 213 billion as stock markets increases by 0.28%. Of course, bank deposits fell by 213 billion naira in December, reflecting the impact of the economic recession on individuals and businesses. While the federal government's bond recorded significant sell-off last week, leading to a fall in prices in both the OTC platform, that is the over-the-counter platform, and the Eurobond market. However, the Nigerian stock market recorded its first weekly gain for the year last week after a bearish start of the previous week. The all-share index rose by 0.28% week on week to close at 26,325.93 points, driven by sustained positive sentiments in the banking and industrial stocks. Accordingly, the year-to-date loss is pared to 2.04%, while market capitalization improved by 26 billion naira, week on week to close at 9.058 trillion naira. Okay, we're also getting news that, of course, China plans a fresh $40 billion investment in Nigeria. The Chinese Foreign Affairs Minister Wang Yi has disclosed plans by the Chinese government to invest up to $40 billion in Nigeria as part of efforts aimed at deepening relations between the two countries. The amount, which was announced by the minister during a joint briefing with his Nigerian counterpart in Abuja, is in addition to other contributions China had made to Nigeria to support her developmental activities. According to the Chinese envoy, his country had invested about $45 billion in various projects in Nigeria and is at the verge of releasing another $40 billion. All right, let's take this report on 2017 budget and economic growth in Nigeria. The national budget, of course, is a fundamental blueprint in the implementation of public policy and a cogent indicator for the economic forecast of a nation, which, if properly implemented, will bring about economic growth and sustainability in various sectors of the economy. Christiana Amodu takes a look at the 2017 budget proposal. Let's take a listen.
President Muhammadu Buhari on the 14th of December 2016 presented a 7.298 trillion naira budget proposal to the joint session of the National Assembly. The long-awaited budget, which was tagged the Budget of Recovery and Growth, is 20.4% higher than the 2016 budget. Some of the factors which led to the economy taking a downturn include the global oil price crash in 2014 due to the nation's overdependence on oil.
We want the government to make sure that the fuel, if it's possible for it to be reduced to the minimum wage that people can be able to buy. And the government should make sure that they should try and increase our salary to commensurate with the increase in the fuel. We want the government to make sure that the fuel, if it's possible for it to be reduced to the minimum wage that people can be able to buy. And the government should make sure that they should try and increase our salary to commensurate with the increase in the fuel.
And I'm saying this because if you look at the step taken so far with regards to the last year policies, the government is really interested in taking us out of this recession. And with regards to the diversification of economy, I believe if you are conversant with the production of rice in this country before now, you come to realize that the production, the interest, people are beginning to get more awareness and get more interested in going to farm.
And also the United States rate hike, which had adverse effects on the economy. A breakdown of the 2017 budget include 2.9 trillion naira for non-debt recurrent expenditure, 2.24 trillion naira for capital expenditure, 419 billion naira for statutory transfers, and 1.66 billion naira for debt service. While the ministries of Power, Works and Housing, Transportation and Defense had the highest allocation in the 2017 budget.
Economically, I'm expecting that there will be a reformation in the system and that there will be a better
budget strictly. To follow the budget strictly and do what is needed. Definitely, there's hope.
Money has come in and what they have done with the money and also what they expect to do, in the year.
Budget strictly. To follow the budget strictly and do what is needed. Definitely, there's hope.
The expectations of Nigerians have been raised since the presentation of the 2017 budget. It is expected that this will be a way out of the current recession which the country is facing. Christiana Amodu, reporting for the Moneyline.
All right, let's move to the foreign scene now. UK Prime Minister Theresa May lays out her plans for a clean break from Europe. Of course, the Prime Minister Theresa May has said the UK government will put the Brexit deal it agrees with the EU, that's the European Union, to a parliamentary vote. In a wide-ranging speech on how the UK plans to make a clean break from the EU following the shocking referendum result last June, Theresa May said she is seeking a new and equal partnership with the rest of the 27-country bloc. The issue of a parliamentary vote had fought with the government initially against putting the negotiations through parliament. Meanwhile, the fall in the British pound since the Brexit vote is starting to feed into its economy as UK inflation rate jumped to 1.6%. This is following the rises in prices of airfares and food. It is the highest rate since July 2014, of course, in December. Now let's talk about the president-elect of the United States of America. Donald Trump's team at Davos says U.S. wants more symmetry in trade deals. The president-elect, Donald Trump, could be one of the last great hopes for globalism, according to a member of his transition team. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Tuesday, American financier Anthony Scaramucci, soon to be an assistant to Trump in the Office for Public Liaison, said that China and the United States had a common cause. Speaking at the event where he was officially billed as an executive member of the president-elect transition team, Anthony said the U.S. and the new administration does not want to have a trade war. Rather, they want more symmetry in trade deals. All right, let's quickly take a break, and when we come back, of course, the rest of the show continues. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's Moneyline with Nancy. Like I did say at the beginning of the program, I'll be zeroing in on this year's budget and, of course, budget issues as well as service delivery issues. And I did say earlier on that my guest will join me. He has joined me. He's Dr. Joe Abah, of course, is the Director General of Bureau of Public Service Reforms. I did say earlier on Bureau of Public Sector Reforms. Public service, public sector. What's actually the difference? But he's the DG Bureau of Public Service Reforms, BPSR. Dr. Joe Abah, good to see you. Welcome to the show. It's been a long time I've seen you, actually. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Okay. Where should we start from? Budget 2017, isn't it? Mr. President has presented a budget of 7.929 trillion naira. That's about 7.3 trillion naira for this year, the largest in the history of Nigeria as a nation. But a lot of us as Nigerians still wonder that with this humongous amount of money every year and all of that, why haven't we even gotten some things fixed? I said earlier on, last year, of course, we had the issue of budget padding. We had the issue of buying a software with 30 million naira. We had the issue of many things and all of that. Can you put in some kind of perspective into all of this? Is it that as press people, as the media, we don't understand it? You know, we go ahead to report, you know, sensational headlines. We don't really understand what the budget is. Just give me some kind of reading into all of this.
Thank you, Nancy. You asked where we should start from, and I think where we should start from is to express our deep sadness at the accidental killing of people in the IDP camps yesterday. My thoughts and prayers are with them, the family of those who died, and of course those who are injured. On a happier note, it will be to congratulate you on your wedding. Congratulations. I think you're glowing as a result.
Thank you very much.
But let's go to the substantive issue of the budget. Let me start by quoting the economist Joseph Schumpeter, who said the budget is the skeleton of the state, stripped of all ideologies. And so the budget is so important, and the best indication of government policy intentions is actually the budget. If the intention of the government is not expressed through the budget, then it's just a wish list. But that is how it should be. That's not how it has always been. And that's why historically in Nigeria we've had a huge disconnect between policy documents such as Vision 2020, the needs document, and the budget. The two have not talked to each other because in Nigeria the budget has not been the skeleton of the state. And that's why those of us involved in governance reforms are so pleased that more and more often Nigerians are getting interested in issues of the budget. Nigerians are asking questions. Nigerians are raising issues. They are beginning to monitor better how expenditure is appropriated and used. So that's a very, very positive development in my view. You ask about the press and whether it's that the press don't understand. Maybe there's part of that, but I also think government should explain more. I think we should explain better. I think our budgets can be cryptic. It's not sufficiently descriptive to avoid questions. So if I give a few examples, people have raised issues to do with the budget of the State House as an example, and I've asked why the State House budgets 42 billion. For the State House. What they don't realize is that the State House is actually the Aso Rock Villa, the residence of the President, that of the Vice President, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Bureau of Public Procurement, the Bureau of Public Enterprises, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru. All of those things make up what we know as the State House. And in terms of land size, you're talking about a land size of 1 million square meters. That is what the State House is. It's actually a land size of 1 million square meters. It includes Dodan Barracks in Lagos, the presidential guest houses. So if you strip out all the agencies, the actual budget for the State House itself, the administrative buildings and the Aso Rock Villa and everything else that goes with it is actually about 13 out of that 42 million.
Billion naira, you mean?
Billion naira, yes. Now I come to the issue of the description of items, and I'll give you an example from the budget proposal of my own bureau. So my own bureau is based in the Federal Secretariat, but if you look at our 2017 budget proposal, you'll see a provision for about 6 million naira that says rent. And so it's perfectly reasonable for anybody to ask, why are you budgeting? Yeah, why are you paying rent for if you're in the Secretariat? What our current budget documents don't allow us to do sufficiently is to show that provision is actually rent arrears from before we were in the Federal Secretariat. So
is it that BPSI is still owing
yes,
the landlord of where you were before?
Exactly.
For how long?
I think it's actually been about 5 years now.
That the federal government hasn't paid the rent.
Hasn't paid the rent, yes, because each year we put it into the appropriation, it never makes it through. And so this year we've decided to put it through because I feel it's unfair on the private sector landlord for government to owe rent for that long and not pay it. And so I put in the 6 million into the BPSR budget. Now, it would have been better if I had the space within the budget document to say rent arrears from when we were in Asokoro, when we were renting. Then everybody will see it and it will be clear. But you need to strike this balance between the size of the budget. At the moment, it's more than 1,000 pages. To how descriptive you can actually be in setting out every component of every budget line. But I think we can get better at that. We can at least say rent arrears, rent advance, current rent, because sometimes somebody will say, well, you pay rent of only 2 million, or you didn't pay rent over the last 3 years. Why are you paying rent this year? Not knowing that it's maybe your 3 years rent that is now due, that you've put into the budget and you want to pay. So we need to get better at how we label.
We should get better.
The budgeting system that we run needs to get better at being clearer on the budget, on specific budget items.
So should the Budget Office of the Federation do a lot more work in terms of being more descriptive, just like you said?
Yes, I think we can get a bit more descriptive than we currently are. But like I said, it's always better to strike a balance between the length of it, because if we had a budget in prose that describes everything, you'll be talking about 10,000 or more pages. So there's that balance to strike. It's also important to work on credibility of the system, because the more Nigerians believe that the budget is actually credible, the less descriptive it needs to be.
Now you've come to a very fundamental issue, which is the credibility part of it. Yes. Because you can be descriptive yes, as much as you want, but without credibility, Nigerians will still not believe. We'll be like, oh, not for them, not for the boys, as they say, you know. So where should that credibility come in? Is this administration offering that much credibility? Bearing in mind what we saw last year, the stories around budget padding, stories around, 1 billion naira to eat food in the State House. What is President Buhari and his family eating? That he's been talking about cutting our lifestyle and all of that. And as Nigerians, for those of us that are on the other side, not on this side of President Buhari, that we've really cut a lot, you know, and all of that. So do you see this administration offering that much credibility?
Nancy, first of all, we're all on the same side. We're all Nigerians. We all shop.
Some people may not agree with you.
I can only speak for myself.
Some people don't go to the markets.
I do. And I actually quite enjoy it.
Really, you do?
I do. It's an opportunity to interact with Nigerians, to feel the pulse of the nation.
But some don't.
It's only when I started going to the market that I got to realize why my wife spends so long in the market, because you can have all sorts of very interesting conversations about how the country is moving and how ordinary citizens are
faring.
feeling. But back to your substantive question, our budgeting system has been poor for quite a while now. It's actually been quite poor for quite a while. Like I said, there's been no correlation between government's intention, stated intentions, and what's in the budget. There's been no correlation between mandates and budgets. There's been none. I'll give an example. We had, I think, in 2014, a fiscal strategy paper that said one of the priorities of government for this year is public service reforms. And I noticed that because of the economic downturn, I think most people's budgets were cut by between 8 and 10%. The budget for public service reforms was cut by 40%. And so I went to the DG budget and I said, this is your fiscal strategy paper, this is your budget. Can you show me the correlation between the two? And of course he couldn't. So we've had this challenge for quite a while. And that's why when the current government came in doing its first full budget, the 2016 budget, strenuous efforts were made to actually ensure that the budget was credible. However, there have been elements in the budgeting system that have continuously sabotaged the interests of the nation for quite a while, and that's what led to what became known as the padded budget. But one thing I can tell you, I'm not an economist, I'm not a budget expert. One thing I can tell you from a public service reform aspect is that the 2017 budget is the most credible that I've been part of. And I've been part of 4 budgets since I've been DG.
Why are you tagging it as the most credible?
Because for the first time, we're required to build up in great detail what it was we wanted to do, the money we needed to do it, how much of each component we needed to do that work, and all of those, and you have to go through different templates step by step to actually build it up to a whole. And I'm talking specifically about the capital budget as an example. And so if you wanted to run a workshop, for instance, you were required to state how many participants you expected, how much you expected to pay for venue, how much you expected to pay for feeding. All of those things had to be carefully set out step by step. And then beyond that, we all had to go to the Ministry of Budget and National Planning during our bilateral talks to explain all of these things, justify them, and show why they needed to be done. And in some cases, they agreed with you. In other cases, they didn't agree with you. And we're beginning to get to a position where we're beginning to get standard costs for certain things. So now we know that if government is having a seminar, a workshop, or a conference, the standard cost of a meal is 1,500 naira. You cannot put anything more. The standard cost of a tea break is 500 naira. You cannot put anything more. The efficiency unit of the Federal Ministry of Finance is doing more work on getting more standard prices for things like vehicles, classrooms, stationery. And as this progresses, it will actually be more and more difficult to inflate costs, because the template will only accept the standard cost in what you're doing. We've never done this in the 4 years that I've been engaging with budgets. Now, we haven't done that level of detail in terms of recurrent expenditure. As far as recurrent expenditure goes, we're asked to cap it at last year's recurrent expenditure rates, regardless of inflation, regardless of rising costs. And so we had, if you like, it's in effect a cut in recurrent expenditure, because inflation has gone up, living costs have gone up, but the recurrent budget was capped at last year's one. So I think we're getting there. It's early days, but we're finally on the path to improving our budget.
Was there any tweak that was done to the capital side, the capital vote side?
Yes, this is what I had described, that in building up the capital vote, you had to go through a number of different processes, a number of different templates, all of it building up to the capital
Will
budget.
there be a concentration on the capital expenses or capital expenditure, especially this year? Because like last year, I realized, and I said a lot of times last year, that I needed the federal government or the executive to hasten payments, especially to local contractors, not about the foreign contractors, because if we're saying inflation is on the increase as at December last year, 18.5%, poverty is skyrocketing, unemployment is high, what on that indicator, GDP growth, of course, crashed to a 25-year low, that we needed something to stimulate growth. And I advised the government in my own little space that, please, can you pay local contractors, concentrate on that. So are we going to see a lot of that? Because there are some people, there are some MDAs are owing like even 10 million, 5 million, 2 million, even 1 million naira. You'll be surprised how much of that will trickle down to the economy, and it will spread. So would we have such concentration this year?
Well, in terms of what is paid and what is released, that is obviously outside my remit. What I can do is give my own example, and I give you the example of rent.
Of the rent.
Which we're owing, because the attitude in the past has always been, we don't have the money, take us to court if you want, which is grossly unfair. And that's why I insisted on...
What's the attitude of your colleagues towards what I've just said? Because you just said your own now, that you want to ensure that your previous landlord where you were staying gets his money. And when he gets his money, he will pay his children's school fees or whatever he wants to do with the 6 million, he will do it. What is the attitude of your other colleagues?
The attitude of my other colleagues is...
Ministers, and I know you all meet at the time. So what's the attitude?
The attitude is the same, but we're in the situation where income is not sufficient to pay everything that needs to be paid. And that's why if you look at a number of budgets in a number of ministries, you see certain things that are proposed every year. So you propose 20, assuming that I propose 6 million this year to pay this rent. It is entirely possible that the National Assembly will appropriate 0 or will appropriate 2 million. And if they do, I'll put it in again next year. So and I'll put in the balance again next year. That is what happens. And it goes to the reason why some of the questions that are raised are, why are you people buying computers every year? Why are you buying this every year? Why are you buying that every year? It's because we never get enough to buy everything we need. So sometimes you phase the purchases in. So if you need to buy 200 computers as an example, and you get an appropriation to buy 50 this year, you put in another 50 the following year, because the income is simply not enough to fund.
So that is why we always see that.
That's why you see that every year, for 2 reasons. First of all, what is released, what is appropriated is not enough usually, and then what is released doesn't always even match the appropriation. And so sometimes you have to have a program over 4 or 5 years during which you will equip, you will equip everybody you need to equip. Secondly, of course, things break down, things need replacing. And so the vehicles that BPSR has, apart from the Innocent Jeep.
I know you use the Innocent. Do you still use it?
I still use it. I'm very proud of it. I took a picture of it coming up your hill.
In case I want to.
On Monday,
Innocent Jeep.
Which, as you know, is a major challenge.
Challenge, yes.
And it does very well, and I'm very, very proud of it.
I wish your other colleagues can also use. I'm not advertising for Innocent, but Nigerian-made products.
I advertise for Innocent. They don't pay me for it, but I'm a Nigerian. I'm proud of the work that they do. So apart from that vehicle which we bought in 2014, we had not bought any vehicle since 2004, when the bureau started. And so again, you see questions about, well, why are you spending X amount on vehicle maintenance? Why are you spending X amount on? It's because there's no money to replace the vehicles. You'll agree with me that a 10-year-old vehicle that runs around every single day will cost you more to maintain than a newer vehicle. So it's a combination of the cost of replacement and maintenance and the inadequacy of funds to meet all our needs. And that's why it's very, very important that you talked about stimulating growth. It's extremely important to us that we have the dual approach of reducing the cost of governance, but also growing the economy. You cannot just focus on one without the other. If you just keep cutting and you don't focus on growing the economy, the country will continue to get poorer. If you grow the economy without cutting costs, you will just be promoting waste. And so it's very important to have our focus on these two areas.
Okay, I want to talk about this vital issue, which is also delay in getting pensions.
Yes.
That is a very vital one, because you see, for those that have worked for 35 years or have attained 60 years, they want to get their pensions at the end of that long service. And I don't know if the government sees it this way, that the way we treat our pensioners will also make young people, because as a country we have more young people will be discouraged from going into public service or working for government, that at the end of the day, please, I won't get my pension. So what's the drive for me? What actually is the attraction? So it's better I remain a private sector person, or I do something else that will give me fast money. So can you talk to me about service delivery issues around delay in getting pensions, even driver's licenses, what else, tax clearances and all of that? Because I know you can't talk about that.
I can talk about those, yes. And first of all, I remember interacting with a number of pensioners some time ago. We do, when we get the funds, we do pre-retirement training for people retiring from agencies and parastatals to prepare them for life outside service. And I remember engaging with a number of them, and the one thing they said is, oh, public servants are completely evil. They don't care about pensioners. And I reminded them that until very shortly, they were public servants themselves. And so, you know, as the saying goes, what you sow is what you reap. The truth of the matter is that in a properly functioning system, you should transit from earning a salary in January to earning a pension in February. And it should just be seamless, it should just work. But it doesn't, and we know it doesn't. What we're not entirely clear about is where exactly the bottlenecks are. And that's why in the next month or so, BPSI is commissioning a number of studies. We've done the terms of reference, we've identified potential resource persons to help us do those studies. And they're focusing precisely on some of the issues that you've talked about. The issue of pensions, the issue of driver's license, tax clearance, passports, obtaining a passport. And what we're trying to do is to map these processes and see where exactly the bottlenecks are. Just in interacting with people since we stated our intentions to do this work, we're finding that, for a start, there's a wide disparity across the country of where the issues and the problems are. So if you take issues like passports, for instance, and perhaps even driver's licenses, Lagos is a particular problem. So you see people in other parts of the country, Kaduna, Akwa Ibom, who will say, oh, I applied for my passport, I got it in 7 days, I didn't need to bribe anybody. It could be because of the population in Lagos, it could be a special issue with the passport office in Lagos, we don't know yet. So we're going to do all these studies and find out exactly where the bottlenecks are. But the other issue is, again, that as government, those people responsible for managing the services do not communicate clearly enough, do not explain clearly enough. And so Nigerians are unaware of exactly how long they're supposed to wait, exactly how long the thing is supposed to cost. And so you see people that have even said, oh, I got my driver's license or I got my passport in 1 day. And you ask them, okay, how much did you pay? And they say 50,000 naira. They are not aware that the 50,000 naira is not the official price. They feel they've paid the official price and they've got it in one day. And so as an example, because it is obvious we can issue passports in one day, there's no reason why government shouldn't have an express service and charge people 50,000, people that want to pay it in one day. And then say to others, if you don't want to pay 50,000, this is how long you need to wait. It needs to take a week, it needs to take 2 weeks. You don't need to know anybody, you don't need to talk to anybody, you don't need to beg anybody, you don't need to employ any touts. Come back and it will be ready. And if it's not ready, this is who you complain to.
Okay, as we come towards the end of the show, very quickly, I want you to comment on this if you can. Because just before we went home for the holidays, there was this news around that perhaps to get your passport, you must have tax clearance. The FIRS said all of that. And most Nigerians went gaga. Do you understand? In terms of, okay, so if my child, I want to get a passport, does my child pay tax and all of that? Do you think that's the best way to go? We understand that government revenue and income right now is tight, but is that the way to go?
I have to be honest, Nancy. I didn't fully engage with that because sometimes you read things in the press, and my advice is always wait a while and ensure that what you're reading is true. I haven't seen a government policy statement that says you must produce a tax clearance to get a passport. I haven't seen it. There are all sorts of speculations in the press which the relevant government
Those are perhaps
agency,
ideas that government is mulling, or government agencies are mulling to make more money for the government.
There is possibly an element of that. There are all sorts of discussions that go on in government. There are discussions about how to improve revenue. There are discussions about how to improve service delivery. There are discussions about how to link different databases so that you're not giving the same information to government 20 times. All of those discussions happen all the time. But I think until the relevant body announces it formally, it will be prudent to exercise some caution.
Okay, one last question for you, and I guess you should answer it very objectively and very dispassionately, because a lot of Nigerians do think that public servants are our biggest problems in the country in terms of corruption. A lot of public servants are corrupt. When you go around, you see directors, assistant directors, PAMSECs. In fact, they say that they own more than a lot of things in Abuja, that they own Abuja, that the public servants own Abuja. They own estates and all of that. You're doing a contract, they want to pad it. When you are being paid, you must go see this one, go see that one. Dispassionately. True.
Dispassionately, if public servants own properties in Abuja or estates in Abuja, I would encourage everybody to report them to the relevant anti-corruption bodies. It will also be good to have a match between the ownership of properties in Abuja and the list of properties in Abuja. So if you do a property census, match it against the ownership and see who actually owns what. But that is not to say that there isn't corruption in the private sector. Of course there is. There's corruption in the public sector. There's corruption in the private sector. There's corruption in the NGO community. There's corruption everywhere in Nigeria. However, the public servant is supposed to be above that. It's supposed to demonstrate example. It's supposed to be there to serve.
Our public servants not clogs in the wheel of progress for Nigeria?
Some may be. Very many are not. Very many are actually working very hard to try and make Nigeria a better place for very little pay. And so, yes, there are some that are impediments to progress, and we need to identify those and weed them out. But there are very, very many giving their lives, sacrificing, making sure that this country works. And I think when we criticize the public sector, we must be mindful of the sacrifice that very many others make so that we don't discourage them from continuing to do so.
Many thanks, Dr. Abah, for coming. And what a smart way to answer my question, but I think I'll leave it at that. And we'll continue on another day.
Thank you, Nancy. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abah. All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Joe Abah, who is the Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms. We've been looking at the issues around the budget 2017 to be precise, as well as service delivery issues, delaying pensions and all of that. Of course, we can't finish this whole budget issue on one show, but all I need to tell you is to continue to watch the program. We'll keep you up to speed with everything happening around Nigeria as it concerns the economy and its financial state. Thank you for joining us today. Like I always say, be the best you can be, but the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Please join us again tomorrow. The news is up next.